My son got married the day before I found out. I was standing in my own kitchen, holding the phone with flowers still on my hands, ready to ask, "So Max, when's the big day?" He lowered his gaze. His wife didn't. Lena looked me straight in the eyes, crossed one leg over the other on my sofa, and said with a little smirk, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. It was special. We only invited important people." Before I continue, if you care about stories like mine, about mothers, sacrifices, and truths that hurt, please like this video and subscribe. It means more to me than you know. Exactly 7 days later, the phone rang again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling between my palms. The house felt different since that day, not physically, but in spirit, as if the walls had heard everything and were still holding their breath. I saw Lena's name on the screen. For a moment, I considered not answering. My thumb hovered over decline. But old habits have long arms. I picked up. "Renata," she began, using my name like it belonged to her, "the rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening us. You forgot to send the transfer." Forgot. For 3 years, I had never once forgotten. $500. Every month. On time. Without fail. I felt my jaw tighten. I looked at the fridge. I remembered the times I'd filled it when they had nothing to eat. The nights I chose soup and bread instead of meat because I'd sent them an extra $100. The small emergencies that always seemed to arrive around the same time as my own bills. "Renata?" she repeated. "Are you there? We really need it. This week. He says he'll kick us out." I could hear something in her voice. A tremor, not of shame, but of fear. Fear of losing comfort. Fear of losing the soft bed of my sacrifices. I took a breath. My hands were trembling, but my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "Lena," I said slowly, "didn't I tell you I only help people who see me as important?" Silence. Heavy, electric silence. I don't understand," she stuttered. "We are important. You're like a second mother to me. You know that." A second mother, but not a first guest at their wedding. Her words floated between us like smoke, and I realized something as I sat there, the tea now cold in my hands. I had been buying a role in their lives, paying rent not just for their apartment, but for my place in their hearts. And even with all those payments, my name never made it on the guest list. That night, after I hung up, I didn't cook dinner. I sat on the edge of my bed, the house dim, the ticking clock somehow louder than usual. I started doing math in my head. Little numbers at first. 3 years of rent, groceries, holidays, birthdays, medical emergencies, that little help for the car. The numbers climbed like a mountain. I went to my drawer, took out my old notebooks, bank statements, receipts, spread them across my bed like a paper graveyard of my generosity. By midnight, I had a rough total, more than $30,000. From my husband's inheritance, from my savings, from the money meant to keep me safe in my old age. And there it was, like a quiet sentence in my mind. They did all of this, and I still wasn't important. My hands were cold, my eyes were dry. I thought I would cry. Instead, something else happened. A thin, cold thread of resolve began to weave itself through my chest. I had no idea that single decision forming in the dark would change the rest of my life. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. It was still half dark, that soft blue hour when the world is quiet, and you can hear your own thoughts clearly, if you dare to listen. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, searching my reflection. Same lines around my mouth, same tired eyes, same silver hair gathered in a clip. But behind my eyes, something had changed, a firmness I didn't recognize, a small, steady flame. I made my coffee, black and strong, and this time
I didn't reach for my phone to check if Max had messaged. I didn't rehearse excuses for them in my head. I didn't plan my day around their needs. For the first time in a long time, my first thought of the day was, what do I need? 2 hours later, I stood in front of the bank. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and the familiar smell of paper and polished floors greeted me. I had walked through those doors so many times, always on their behalf. My purse used to feel heavier with worry. Today, it felt heavy with purpose. "Good morning, Mrs. Rector." The branch manager, Mr. Klein, greeted me. He recognized me immediately. Of course he did. He had watched my account drip, drip, drip into theirs for years. "What can we do for you today?" I took a slow breath. My heart was beating hard but steady. "Mr. Klein, I'd like to cancel all automatic transfers to my son and his wife. Every single one. And I'd like information on how to protect my accounts. No one is to have access to my money but me." He blinked. His eyebrows lifted a little. "Of course. Are you sure, Mrs. Rector? This is quite a change after 3 years." "Yes," I said quietly. "I'm sure. I've been unsure for too long." While he typed, my phone vibrated in my bag. Once, twice, 3 times. I knew without looking who it was. It rang again. I let it. "Done," Mr. Klein finally said, sliding a document toward me. "Everything is under your control now. Only yours." His eyes softened. "If I don't mind me saying so, ma'am, I've seen you be very generous. I hope no one has forced you into this change." I swallowed. That small kindness almost broke the thin wall holding my tears back. "No," I replied. "For the first time in years, no one is forcing me. Not even me." When I stepped back out into the daylight, the air felt different on my skin, lighter, sharper. I went home, humming a little tune under my breath I hadn't realized I still remembered. But that feeling of freedom lasted exactly until I turned the corner and saw 3 cars parked in front of my house. Max's, Lena's, and a sleek dark one I didn't recognize. My key was cold in my hand. My heart thudded in my chest. They were inside, in my house, and I had no idea what kind of storm I was about to walk into. The hallway smelled faintly of Lena's perfume when I'd opened the door. That alone made my stomach twist. My own living room, the one I dusted every week, looked like a scene from someone else's life. Max sat hunched over on the sofa, elbows on his knees, hands knitted together. The same sofa I'd helped them choose from the showroom. Lena paced in front of the coffee table, restless, her heels clicking on my hardwood floor. At my dining table, a stranger in a gray suit was flipping through my papers. My papers. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. "What is going on here?" 3 heads turned. For a brief second, none of them spoke. Lena recovered first. "Oh, Renata, thank goodness you're here," she said, as if she were the hostess and I the late guest. "We were so worried about you. This is Dr. Fisher from the family law firm I told you about." Family law. The words dropped like stones in my stomach. "Worried about me?" I asked slowly, setting my purse down. "What situation exactly?" Max stood. He looked older than I remembered, but not from hardship, from worry about losing comfort. His expression was a mixture of anger and something like desperation. "Mom, we went to the bank. They said you canceled the transfers. Mr. Klein said you also blocked our access to your accounts. You're making big financial decisions without talking to us. That's
Not like you. I felt my fingers curl slightly. Not like me. Not the version of me they'd trained to be their safety net. Dr. Fisher stepped forward, hand extended, smile smooth. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher. Your son and daughter-in-law are concerned about your mental well-being. At your age, sudden changes like this can be a sign of confusion or decline. They just want to make sure you're safe. I did not take his hand. Instead, I walked past him and calmly gathered my papers off the table. Bank statements, insurance documents, my will. My life spread open for a stranger's inspection. You had no permission to go through these, I said quietly. This is my home. These are my private documents. Mom, Max started. Using that patronizing tone, I only now realized he'd been polishing for years. You're acting irrationally, cutting us off with no warning, ignoring our calls. This isn't you. You need help. We just want to support you. Lena reached for my hand, her voice now syrup-sweet. Renata, we love you. You know that. Everything we've done is because we care, but you have to admit, installing cameras, changing locks, cutting us off, it's not normal. Cameras? Locks? I hadn't even done those things yet. In that moment, I understood. They were already building a story, a version of me that looked unstable, paranoid, unsafe. To be clear, Dr. Fisher added smoothly, we have simply prepared some papers, a power of attorney, so your son can help manage your finances, temporarily, of course, until things settle. He placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. I looked at the folder, at their eager faces, at the hands that had taken and taken and taken. My heart raced, but my voice came out calm. No. Lena blinked. What? No, I repeated. You will all leave my house now. Dr. Fisher's smile thinned. You may not fully understand today's reality, Mrs. Richter. If you refuse, your children do have legal options. A court can decide if you're still capable of handling your affairs. There it was. The threat. Not even dressed up anymore. They were willing to paint me insane to keep my money flowing. Mac's eyes flashed. Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. Just sign. It's for your own good. I picked up the folder, walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and dropped it in. You have 10 seconds, I said, my voice shaking only slightly, to get out of my house. The look on Lena's face, the mix of shock and cold fury, told me everything I needed to know. They weren't going to give up. They were just getting started. The day after that confrontation, I did something I should have done long ago. I made an appointment with my own lawyer. Mr. Weber's office smelled faintly of coffee and old books. He was a calm man with kind eyes and a serious way of listening that made me feel, for the first time in weeks, truly seen. I told him everything. The hidden wedding, the years of money, the surprise visit with the lawyer in my own house, the threats of legal options. He listened without interrupting, only occasionally jotting down notes. Mrs. Richter, he said finally, leaning back in his chair, what your son and daughter-in-law are doing is a classic pattern. It's called elder financial abuse. They depended on your money. Now that you've taken it back, they're trying to take you. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. What can they do? I asked softly. Can they really have me declared incompetent? It's not easy, but it's possible, especially if they gather people willing to lie or twist their observations. What we will do is the opposite. We'll document your clarity, your independence, your history of managing your life, and we'll prepare in case they try anything. When I left his office, I felt a strange mixture of fear and strength. Fear because my own child had become a threat. Strength because I was no longer alone in this fight. That afternoon, as I walked up my front steps, I saw her. A woman sitting on the edge of the neighbor's low brick wall, holding a mug, watching me with gentle curiosity. Gray hair in a loose bun, cardigan buttoned wrong, eyes that had seen things. "Mrs. Richter?" she asked. "I'm Eleanor from next door. We've lived beside each other for years, but, well, life." We both smiled at that word, life. She continued carefully. "I heard raised voices the other day. I didn't want to pry, but are you all right?" No one in my family had asked me that question with genuine concern in a very long time. Something in me loosened. Would you like a cup of coffee?" I asked. "I think there's a story you should hear." We sat in my kitchen, steam rising from our mugs, raindrops beginning to gently tap against the window. As I spoke, Eleanor listened the way only someone who has known pain can listen, quietly, with little nods and the occasional that said, "I understand more than you know." When she finished, she put her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, her palm soft. "Ranella," she said, "you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter. Cutting off the money felt like tearing myself in half, but it was the only way to see who she really was, and it was the only way for me to survive." "Did she ever come back?" I whispered. "Truly come back?" "Yes," she said, "but only after she learned to stand on her own 2 feet. The thing is, some children never learn, and that, my dear, is not your failure." That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without waking every few hours to check my phone. I thought maybe, just maybe, things might calm down. I didn't know that the storm was watching me from the street, engine running, waiting for its next opportunity. Over the next few days, my world began to quietly rearrange itself. I changed the locks. Ethan, the hardware store owner's son, installed a simple camera system, not because I was paranoid, but because I was practical. I wrote everything down, the visits, the calls, the messages. Mr. Weber said, "Documentation is your shield." My phone rang constantly. Unknown numbers. I started letting them go to voicemail. The house felt more peaceful that way. Then one Tuesday morning, the doorbell rang. I checked the small screen connected to the camera. A young woman stood on my porch, neat bun, clipboard, official-looking badge hanging from her neck. My heart sunk. I knew, even before she spoke, who had sent her. "Good morning, Mrs. Richter," she said as I opened the door. "I'm Mrs. Schmidt from Senior Services. We received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we're here to do a wellness check." At risk. There it was again. "May I see your ID?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She showed it politely. It was real. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. If I had nothing to hide, there was nothing to feel. And I had nothing to hide. We sat in the living room. The cushion under me felt firmer than usual, like it too was bracing for this conversation. "We've been informed," she began, "that you've made sudden drastic financial changes, cut off communication with your family, installed security systems out of fear, and refused medical and legal assistance offered by your loved ones. At your age, these can be concerning signs." Each word was like a little needle, carefully sewn, precisely aimed. I could almost hear Lena's voice behind them. I folded my hands in my lap. They were trembling slightly, so I pressed them together until they steadied. Mrs. Schmidt, I said, I'd like to call my lawyer before I answer any questions. She hesitated. Ma'am, this isn't an interrogation. If you have nothing to hide— If I have nothing to hide, I repeated gently, then there is also no harm in my lawyer being present, is there? 20 minutes later, Mr. Weber was sitting in the armchair opposite her, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. Mrs. Schmidt asked her questions again, but this time she listened not only to the words, but to the context Mr. Weber helped provide. Do I live alone? Yes. Do I manage my own bills? Yes, on time, for decades. Do I drive? Yes. Do I take any medication? Just vitamins and the occasional aspirin. Why did I cut off my son financially? Because I realized I was being used, not loved. Mr. Weber laid out the printouts of bank transfers, showing the steady stream of money flowing out of my account and into theirs. He showed the logs of unreturned visits, one-sided calls, messages asking only for money. Mrs. Schmidt's original notes began to look a little thin. Her eyes softened as she packed up her folder. Mrs. Richter, she said quietly, from what I see, you're managing your life very well. I will be closing this case. If you ever feel truly unsafe, please call us. But from where I sit, you're not the one in danger here. After she left, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the small trail of her car disappear down the street. I felt both relieved and deeply, deeply sad. To have your sanity poked and prodded because you dared to say no to your own child. I thought that might be the worst of it. I was wrong. The worst part was still quietly on its way in a neat stack of papers with my name on them.
3 weeks later, Mr. Weber arrived at my house with a face I had not seen on him before. Serious, heavy. Renata, he said, closing the door gently behind him. Sit down. We need to talk. I sat at the table. The wood under my fingers felt suddenly cold. They've done it, he said. Max and Lena have filed a formal petition in family court. They are asking that you be declared mentally incompetent and that a legal guardian, your son, be appointed to control your finances and decisions. For a moment, the room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. My own son, I whispered. My little boy. My mind flashed with images. Max at 5, sleeping on my chest. Max at 10, waving his school certificate. Max at 16, eating dinner with his headphones in, barely looking up. On what grounds? I asked, my voice fragile but clear. Mr. Weber opened the folder he carried. They've gathered statements from Lena, obviously, from your neighbor across the street, Mr. Davis, and from your pharmacist, Mr. Green. They claim you've become paranoid, are refusing necessary medical care, making irrational financial decisions, and that you're being manipulated by strangers. Mr. Green? I repeated, stunned. He knows me. He knows I only buy vitamins and— We'll speak to him, Mr. Weber said. People sign things they don't fully understand, especially when a sweet young woman with a sad story and big eyes asks for a little help for her poor, confused grandmother-in-law. A slow, cold anger began to spread through my chest. We went to the pharmacy that same afternoon. Mr. Green nearly dropped a bottle when he saw me. Mrs. Richter, I've been meaning to call you. We walked into his small office in the back. The smell of antiseptic and cardboard burned my nose. Did you sign a statement about me? I asked quietly. He swallowed hard. Your daughter-in-law came in.
She said you were forgetting your medication, that she was scared. She showed me a form, said it was for insurance. I just wrote that you only bought vitamins and aspirin, nothing more. I swear I didn't know it was for court." He looked genuinely ashamed. "I'll write another statement. The truth. Every detail." From there, we went to Mr. Davis, the neighbor across the street. He answered the door with a frown. "Yes?" "I just came to ask, why did you tell the court I was acting crazy?" He shrugged. "You put up cameras. You have strangers coming by all the time. You shouted at your son in the street. Looks like crazy to me." "The strangers are my friends. The cameras are for protection. The shouting was because they barged into my home and tried to take my life from me." He snorted. "That's what crazy people say." We left without another word. Not everyone can be reached. That evening, Mr. Weber and I made a plan. "You need an independent psychiatric evaluation from someone with no ties to them. We need to show the court you're not only competent, you're sharper than they want you to be." I agreed. Even though the word psychiatrist made my stomach clench, I knew I had to face it. 2 days later, I sat across from Dr. Moore. She asked me everything. What year is it? Who is the president? What did you eat for breakfast? Then deeper questions. How do you manage your bills? Why did you stop helping your son financially? How do you feel about this lawsuit? For 2 hours, she watched me with thoughtful, kind eyes as I spoke. At the end, she said, "Mrs. Richter, your cognitive scores are excellent, not just for your age, for any age. You are very far from incompetent. The only thing wrong here is how you're being treated." Her report became our shield, but paper shields don't make the battlefield less frightening. The day of the hearing was approaching. I could feel it in the way my hands shook when I poured tea, in the way my heart jolted every time the phone rang. I knew one thing, though. Whatever they tried to take from me in that courtroom, I would not willingly surrender my dignity. What came next would test that promise in ways I never expected. The courthouse smelled faintly of stone and old dust, with a hint of coffee from someone's cup down the hall. My shoes clicked softly on the floor as we walked toward the courtroom. Each step felt heavier than the last. I clutched the handle of my purse with both hands, the leather warm from my grip. Beside me, Mr. Weber walked with quiet confidence. "Remember," he murmured, "they have to prove you're incompetent. We only have to show the truth." Inside, the room was smaller than I imagined. Wooden benches, a high desk where the judge would sit, a few people scattered in the back. At the front table sat Max and Lena. Max wore a new suit. His hair was carefully combed. He looked nervous. Lena wore black, as if attending a funeral. Perhaps in her mind she was. Maybe she thought today they'd buried the last bit of my independence. She met my eyes without flinching. There was no warmth there, just calculation. When the judge entered, everyone stood. "They ceded," he said. "This is the matter of Richter versus Richter regarding guardianship and competency." Their lawyer spoke first. He painted a picture of a fragile, confused old woman descending into paranoia, surrounded by new influences and manipulative acquaintances, making impulsive financial decisions that put her at risk. I sat very still. I listened to every word. Then came their witnesses. Lena took the stand, voice trembling, eyes shimmering with tears that fell at just the right moments. "Renata has always been like a second mother to me. She's always been like a second mother to me. We were so close. But in the last months, she's changed. She shuts us out, accuses us of using her, refuses to let us help. We're just trying to protect her." Mr. Weber's cross-examination was gentle but precise. "When was the last time you visited her without asking for money?" Silence. He let it hang there. "Is it true you and your husband married without inviting her?" "It was a small ceremony," she muttered. "Is it true you told her only important people were invited?" "That's not. It was a joke. She took it wrong." "What kind of joke," he asked quietly, "has the power to break a mother's heart?" She had no answer. Max was next. "Seeing my son swear to tell the truth, then use that oath to hurt me, was something I would not wish on my worst enemy. He spoke of my sudden changes, my strange behavior. He said, 'Mom has always needed us. Now she pushes us away. It's like she's not herself.' When Mr. Weber asked him, 'How much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?' he said he didn't remember. Would you be surprised to learn that the total is over $30,000? Max shifted in his seat. She wanted to help. And in those 3 years, how many times did you visit her without needing something?" Silence again. Their lawyer then brought forward a surprise. Documents I had not seen. Loan applications with my name as cosigner, a credit card with my name attached to it. My breath caught. I had never signed those. I looked at the signatures. They were similar to mine, but not mine. That, their lawyer said smoothly, shows how entangled her finances are with her son's, another reason he needs to take responsibility. Mr. Weber quickly requested a break to review them. The judge agreed. In the hallway, my legs almost gave out beneath me. "They forged my name," I whispered. "Yes," Mr. Weber said grimly, "and in trying to use those papers to control you, they just exposed something much darker. This isn't just greed, Renata. It's fraud." Back inside, when it was our turn, Mr. Weber laid everything out like a careful tapestry. He called Mr. Green, who admitted he had been misled about the form he'd signed. He called Dr. Moore, who confirmed my mental clarity and cognitive strength. He called Eleanor, who spoke of the woman she saw now, not confused, but finally awake. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand. My hand shook a little as I raised it to swear, but my voice when I spoke was steady. I told the judge about raising Max alone after my husband died, about working double shifts, about skipping meals so he could have seconds. I talked about the years of help, the rent, the groceries, the emergencies that always seemed to find their way to my doorstep. And I talked about the wedding. Those 4 words, only important people came. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "I am not here because I don't love my son. I'm here because I finally understood he doesn't love me the way a son should, not as a person, as a provider." When their lawyer tried to trip me up with tricky questions, I answered them calmly, precisely. In that moment, I wasn't just defending my mind. I was defending my worth. We finished. The judge said he would take a recess to review everything. As he left the bench, my heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I had no idea what his decision would be. All I knew was this: whatever he said next would decide the shape of the rest of my life.
When the judge returned, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Even the air felt tighter. He adjusted his glasses, looked at the stack of papers in front of him, then at me. After reviewing the testimonies, medical evaluations, and financial records, he began. This court finds no evidence that Mrs. Renata Richter is mentally incompetent. A rush of air left my chest.
I hadn't even realized I'd been holding it. In fact, he continued, the evidence shows a pattern of financial dependence from the petitioners and a recent, justified decision by Mrs. Richter to protect her assets. This may be emotionally difficult for her family, but it is neither irrational nor proof of mental decline. The petition for guardianship is denied in full. Denied. The word rang in my ears like a bell. He went on, speaking of boundaries, of the rights of older adults, of the dangers of using legal tools as weapons, but all I could really hear was that single word, denied. My son would not control my life. When we left the courtroom, Lena swept past me, her face twisted in anger I'd never seen so nakedly before. "You'll regret this," she hissed under her breath. "You think you've won? You've lost your family." I watched her walk away, heels clicking, head high. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had lost my family. Max lingered a little longer. He looked at me, and for just a moment, the mask fell. I saw the boy he used to be. Then the man he'd become pushed through again. "You didn't have to do this, Mom. You chose strangers over us." "No, I chose me." He shook his head and followed his wife. The echo of their footsteps faded down the hallway. Beside me, Mr. Weber put a hand on my shoulder. "You did well," he said. On the drive home, the world outside the window looked different. The same streets, the same trees, but my place in it all had shifted. That evening, Eleanor came over with a homemade pie and 3 of our friends from the garden club. We sat around my table, the same table where my papers had once been spread like open wounds, and laughed, really laughed. Karma, I have learned, is rarely loud. It doesn't always appear as big punishments or dramatic scenes. Sometimes, karma is simply this. You see people clearly. They lose the ability to fool you. Weeks passed. Then months. I heard bits of news. Max and Lena had to move to a smaller apartment when the landlord wouldn't tolerate late payments anymore. The car with the forged signature was repossessed. Lena, who once said a job was beneath her, started working at a small shop on the edge of town. I did not rejoice in their hardship, but I did feel something shift inside me. They were finally living the life they had tried to make me pay for. Meanwhile, my own life, quietly, slowly, began to bloom. I went back to the hair salon after more than a year away. Cynthia, my hairdresser, clasped my hands. "You look lighter," she said. I joined Eleanor's garden club. We planted things and watched them grow. I started painting again, filling my small spare room with canvases of flowers, old streets, and women with tired eyes and strong jaws. For the first time in decades, I spent money on myself without guilt. A good pair of shoes, a nicer coat, art classes at the community center. Karma, I realized, had been working on me too. It was giving me back all the pieces of myself I had given away. I thought my story had reached its end, but there was one more chapter still waiting for me. The chapter where I finally understood what all of this had truly meant.
3 months after the trial, I sold my house. People were surprised. How could I leave the place I'd lived in for so many years? The place where I'd raised my son, buried my husband, cooked 1,000 meals. The answer was simple. The house was full of ghosts. Not ghosts of the dead, ghosts of the woman I had been. the one who waited by the phone, who measured her worth in wire transfers and favors, who believed love could be purchased with the right sacrifice. I moved into a smaller apartment closer to the city center. Old building, crooked stairs, a tiny balcony that caught afternoon light just right. On my first evening there, I made myself a cup of tea and stepped onto that little balcony. The cup was warm in my hands. The air carried the distant hum of traffic and the soft murmur of people living their lives. I looked up at the sky, painted in soft orange and pink. "I made it," I whispered, to my husband, to myself, to the woman I used to be. I donated a good portion of my remaining savings to organizations that protect people like me, older men and women whose own blood turns against them for money. With the rest, I didn't save for Max anymore. I saved for Renata. I traveled to a small town by the sea that I had always wanted to visit with my husband, but never did. I sat on the shore with my shoes off, feeling the cold water lap at my ankles, and cried quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. I took art classes. I started volunteering twice a week at a senior center, listening to stories that sounded painfully familiar. A son who borrowed and never returned, a granddaughter who only visited when she needed a cosigner, a nephew who moved into an old aunt's house to help and then never left. Every story added a small piece to my understanding. This wasn't just about me. It was about a whole generation of parents who thought love meant never saying no. I still think of Max. Of course I do. Sometimes late at night, I imagine he'll knock on my door, not to ask for money, not to demand anything, just to say, "Mom, I'm sorry. I see it now." Maybe that day will come. Maybe it won't. But here is what I know now in my bones. If he comes back, it will be because he has changed. Not because I bent myself into a new shape to fit his comfort. Sitting on my balcony one evening, a soft breeze brushing my cheeks, I realized something simple and profound. I had spent most of my life loving everyone else first. I thought that's what good mothers do, what good wives do, what good women do. No one ever told me that love without respect slowly kills you. I had to lose my son, in the way that I lost him, to learn this truth. You cannot buy real love. You cannot bribe someone into valuing you. You cannot keep pouring from a cup that no one ever bothers to refill. Now, when I look back at the woman standing in that kitchen, hearing "we only invited important people," I don't just feel pain for her. I feel gratitude, because that awful, humiliating moment, that shard of glass to the heart, was the crack where the light finally began to enter. My name is Renata. I am 72 years old. I lost the illusion of a loving son, but I found something far more precious, myself. If my story touched something in you, if you know someone who might be walking a path like mine, please like this video and subscribe. Not for numbers, not for vanity, but so stories like ours are not buried in silence anymore. And if you are a mother, a father, a grandparent, sitting somewhere with a phone in your hand, waiting for a call that only comes when money is needed, please remember this. You are not an ATM with feelings. You are a human being with a history and a right to live your last years in peace. Love is a gift, not a price. And sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for your children is to finally say no more. That was my truth, and that was only the beginning of my real life.